Hello and a warm welcome to a brand new season of The Big Debate on SABC2 and SAFM, coming to you live from Shine Studios in the heart of Jozi. I'm Ridi Hlabi. Now, the biggest criminals in South Africa are not car hijackers. Rather, they sit in corporate boardrooms and top government offices. By capturing the state, they have looted billions of rands, money that could build 3,000 schools. That's the story of state capture. Some believe that the Guptas and President Jacob Zuma are the worst offenders. Others argue that the state was captured from the time of Cecil John Rhodes. Whichever is true, the losers are you and me. We lose cash and we lose trust in government, from who's appointed in parliament to who is arrested by the police. But the question is, how do they get away with it? And what can we do about it? Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by Themba Maseko, former head of government communications, now spokesperson for Business Leadership South Africa, Mzwane Lemanyi, who recently purchased the Gupta's media empire, ANN7, and the New Age, using money loaned by the Gupta family, and is a former head of the Black Management Forum. Feki Mentor, ANC defector, who has recounted how she was offered a ministerial post in return for helping the Guptas. Floyd Shivambu, Deputy President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, and he also is a member of the State Capture Inquiry in Parliament. Anne Benstein, Director of the Center for Development and Enterprise, and also board member of the Oppenheimer Family Foundation. Lucky Montana is the former CEO of the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, that's PRASA. Henny van Vuuren, author of Apartheid, Guns and Money, which covers looting by apartheid-era arms companies. And last but not least, Zukiswa White, a feminist activist from Wits University. And in the audience, we have worker leaders, Zwelenzima Vavi, Dennis George, business people like Gayton McKenzie, Danny Sabaloyi, activists including Mark Haywood, investigative journalists Skonati Manchanja and Susan Comrie. And of course, most importantly, at least for me, we have communities from across the country who are also going to have a voice today. Welcome to all of you. And you at home can have your say. Contact us on Facebook or Twitter, or give us a missed call and we'll call you right back. We really want to hear your questions and we want to know what state capture and corruption mean to you. But before we start our debate, take a look at this.
South Africa was built on mining. Gold, diamonds and coal have made mine owners extremely rich. Companies benefited from their close relations with the government. Thousands of workers who put in their blood and sweat underground lost their lives. Mining families are poor to this day. The Mpumalanga coalfields supply Eskom with power. The names of new miners echo around the coalfields. Alongside Oppenheimer and De Beers, we now have Ramaphosa, Gupta, Zuma. Moses Masango worked for 25 years at the Optimum mine, now owned by the Gupta family and President Jacob Zuma's son, Dudezane. Despite mining coal, Moses lives without power. Workers are not allowed to use coal from the mine. When Moses started working on the mine, it was owned by huge multinational firm Glencore. In 2012, the mine's profits were down. They started firing workers. Moses lost his job. Glencore approached Eskom CEO Brian Molefe for more cash for their coal. Molefe turned them down. Enter the Guptas. The game changed. Eskom transferred R500 million for coal to a Gupta company, enabling them to buy the mine. Eskom then stood surety for a further 1.5 billion rands. Molefe appeared to have used his influence and state resources to enrich the Gupta family, the business partners of President Zuma's son. This is what has come to be known as state capture. How does it work?
you have to actually go out of your way to weaken state organs. That you do by actually targeting good, honest, hard-working civil servants. Once you hound them out, then you would replace them with people that will basically do your bidding.
Evidence is emerging that this is exactly what the Guptas tried at government institutions, from Metro Rail and PRASA to Transnet, Denel and SAA. At Transnet, they received billions in commissions for a train tender. Where they failed to get their way, they seem to have had the power to fire CEOs and ministers. Mzwanele Jimmy Manye managed R1 billion of government advertising allegedly targeted by the Guptas. He now heads a media empire acquired with their backing. He defends their actions.
They have disrupted the eating of the white monopoly capital. This is why the Guptas are hated. The Guptas have found white monopoly capital at the main table eating alone, and they are part of this now.
Journalist Sabelo Skiti has documented state capture. He rejects the view that the Guptas are good for transformation.
There's no need for people to capture the state and use that argument as a red herring.
Jimmy, look at your conscience and look at whether what you are being paid is sufficient for you to contribute to selling South Africa.
Magda Wierzycka is one of the richest women in South Africa. She fired KPMG from her investment company over their links with the Guptas.
The state capture project has made every South African poorer.
The other part that is not really thoroughly discussed is what happens to people's faith in democracy. And
Mark Swirling co-authored a report on state capture called Betrayal of the
noble
Promise.
Project of political leadership. The disillusionment with political leadership is actually going to take is going to cause much more severe damage in the long run.
Back on the Mpumalanga coalfields, mine worker Moses Masango blames his continued unemployment on state capture.
Omunye umfo wathi silamba negwili ngoba bonke balapha emaparlamente nje bathi abanamali. Amagupta la afika nokuthi azosixosha, hayi ukuthi azoletha umnotho. Abahambe bebuyele esweni labo na umsholozi ephume esikhundleni kungena abanye. Just umuntu ozophatha lo mbuso wala eSouth Africa ewuphathe ngendlela right.
All right, after seeing that, we're going to do things a little differently. Instead of me asking the question, we're going to go straight to our audience member. I believe we've got Madikana. You've got a question based on what you've just seen. Go ahead.
Mzwanele Manyi says the Guptas are disrupting white monopoly capital. But isn't it true that the Guptas and the white monopoly capital are disrupting the economy to the detriment of the poor?
Thank you very much, Madikana. Mzwanele, how do you answer that?
Yeah. Let's start by firstly expressing disappointment in terms of the research done by the big debate, because when you started in your insert, you start by saying, I bought this business with the money from the Guptas. That's not what is vendor financing. Vendor financing means that in my particular situation, there is not 1 cent that went from the Guptas to me, not 1 cent. What is going to happen is that out of the proceeds of the business, I'm going to pay off their debt. So that's the one. Now, in terms of the question that is being asked, I think it's important to agree with the fact that the state capture is actually very bad for South Africa. There's not one argument that can be made to say state capture is good. But the issue that is not getting discussed in this country is the fact that you have people that have already been convicted of bad business practices, but nothing happens to them. If you go to the Competitions Commission and you see white monopoly capital crimes that are there, that get sugar-coated and get called collusion and get called all these soft names and get called insider trading issues that get given all kinds of fancy names, that is a problem that is eating the...
We are going to get into our next theme, but I absolutely have to ask you, what is it that the Guptas are doing for transformation? The question basically says that the Guptas and white monopoly capital, let's call it that, are just the same problem. It's a continuum.
Yeah, no, I think the issue around the Guptas the Guptas do not qualify as black people for BE purposes. So therefore, the presence of the Guptas per se is not transformation, as it were. This
but
is
in
why
that insert, you say they are coming in to disrupt white monopoly capital.
Yeah,
and I want to understand in what way are they
let me tell
doing
you how
that?
they disrupted it. Yeah, that is correct. In this way, if you go to ESCOM, for instance, ESCOM, you would find white monopoly capital eating big time.
We're
What
not
is
disputing
no,
that.
let
The
me give
question
you-
is, how are the Guptas
Yeah, but this is what
disrupting
I'm
that
telling
scenario?
you. This is what I'm telling you. They go to ESCOM. If you go to ESCOM, this is where white monopoly capital is eating in ESCOM. Companies like BHP, Billiton, Anglo, Exaro, all of them. What they have there, they have what is called cost-plus models. In other words, with this cost-plus model, ESCOM has to pay for the sinking of the shaft. ESCOM has to pay for the development to get to the coal. And then ESCOM has to
You
pay
are
for the
talking
product.
about established business,
Now,
but we want you to
I
respond
think-
to the Gupta. We'll come back to you then. We'll come back to you because those themes that you're raising are part of our themes that we're going to deal with. But I wanted you to account for your statement about how the Guptas are disrupting.
Yeah, but
you
must
haven't
give me a
said that.
chance to
There
answer.
are 10 other people here, and
But
we need
must
to
give
go
me a
to
chance
them
to
at some
answer.
point. I have given you a chance. We'll come back to you to complete your point. And I want to focus on your relationship. You are on the board of the Brenthurst Foundation, started by the Oppenheimers. The Oppenheimers, mining, Anglo. Mining has such a terrible history in this country. Executives and companies making billions of rands built on the back of inequality and poverty of black people. So, does established business like Anglo, like Oppenheimers, need to take moral responsibility for poverty, for inequality, conditions which are used to justify state capture?
Look, apartheid was a terrible system, and white business were a part of that system, as were many other people. Now, we're 23 years into a democracy. I'm interested in how we move forward and deal with poverty today.
But we can't deal with poverty without
So-
acknowledging that the people who benefited
I
have
agree.
not done
Mining
their bit
cap-
to transform our society.
Big mining companies benefited greatly under apartheid. They did pay their taxes, by the way, which is more than we can say for some other people.
Let me finish.
But, well, so I agree. I think there were terrible laws under apartheid, and black South Africans were treated appallingly. And that's why we have a legacy of appalling poverty, terrible education, and all sorts of things that we know about.
But those conditions that we all know about, should established business take moral responsibility for it? And is that why we're here today?
I think established business went to the Truth Commission, and a lot of them apologized for what they'd done. A lot of them said,
Not enough? Okay.
A
Pause it
lot
there.
of
Floyd,
them
I want you
said-
to come in. I want you to come in. We haven't heard how the Guptas are disrupting the situation. 30 seconds. Tell us what you think.
Look, I think let's put this in context that South Africa had been captured since 1652 when the colonial settlers arrived in South Africa. And what 1994 was supposed to represent was the reclamation of a captured economy and captured nation. But what the ANC has been trying to do since 1994 is to substitute the white capturers with black capturers. And now they're trying to substitute under Jacob Zuma with the Guptas. And the Guptas are corrupt, decidedly corrupt. They are looting our state resources, and they zombify individuals like Jimmy Manya. That's why he speaks like he was speaking now, to just defend them like
All right.
blood in terms of what happened.
Okay. Are you captured? All right, okay, we'll get back to that. There'll be plenty of time. Are you captured or uncaptured? Are you affected by corruption? You can buzz us, tweet us, Facebook us. After the break, we talk about the impact of state capture on you and me. Don't go away. Welcome back to the Big Debate, coming to you live from Joburg. We're also live on SAFM. We're discussing state capture. Now, we learned recently in the news that our trains were actually captured, or rather that billions of rands for trains were paid as commission to Gupta-linked companies. That was in Transnet. There was also an attempt to capture PRASA train contracts, the ones used for Metro Rail. Now, let's take a look at some commuters who actually use those trains. Pindile Nhlapo wakes up at 3 a.m. every morning to catch 2 trains to work. She's worried about her safety on the trains, so she always moves with colleagues. Often, the trains break down or don't pitch. That's what happened with her second train on the day we filmed. So she has to get a taxi instead.
Mawuphuma ngaleso sikhathi 4 sometimes unokuthola itrain ingakangeni. Njengoba ngumzali ukuthi ngize ngihambe ibudget yami vele iyakhatheka ngoba ngisuke ngingayifakanga ebudgetini itaxi. Ngifaka itrain, ngithenga itikiti le train for imali. Ngitshela ukuthi ngizohamba ngetrain for the whole month. Umntana kumele akhere, kumele abambe isikhaftini. Unemali efuneka esikolweni. Yabona ukuthi leyo ile ngibudgetele vele leyo. But mara le yeTaxi ayikho ebudgetini. Ngiyaphuma ebudgetini.
I don't understand ukuthi planning yenzeka kanjani. I understand inkinga mayivela once. But if it's a repetition of the same exercise every day, I fail to understand ukuthi why kungabi nama contingency plan okwenza isimo sibe better.
All right, let's hear from you, Lucky. You are a former CEO of PRASA. Was PRASA captured with money that could have been used to improve conditions for somebody like Phindile, or did you try and stop the capture?
Well, not at all. I think I dealt with the state. I don't believe firstly in the concept of state capture. I think that when Advocate Thulima Donsela released a report, she said the state of capture. She didn't say state capture. And I think there was a very good reason for that. Because she knows that if you define a modern state, the key functions of a modern state, you cannot attribute everything that we have been discussing today or even in the public as state capture. Now, the Guptas have tried at PRASA, and everyone knows in 2012, not now, I know today we have people making a lot of noise. So fashionable today to attack the Guptas.
Okay, tell us what they tried to do and what you did.
They tried to manipulate, of course, the tender for PRASA in 2012, and I threw them out. And it created quite a lot of conflict, created a lot of problems. But the problems of Metro Rail, as you see them today, and I don't want to speak on behalf of PRASA, they date back to the time when the government took a decision in the 1980s not to invest anymore in rail transport, and not only passenger. I'm also referring to freight transport. The result of that was the growth of the minibus taxi industry on the passenger side and the increase on trucks on the roadside. So I think the system collapsed as far back as 1992. What we were trying to do was to salvage that, because if you don't solve the problems of Metro Rail in particular, not only will you put a burden on the traveling commuters, but what you'll do is that you'll put a brake on our urban development.
We can have an argument about whether buying unsuitable trains are the right response to the condition that you've just described, but we don't have time for that. Let's park it for the moment. But let's deal with this at a conceptual level. Lucky Montana says he doesn't believe in state capture, talking about the Public Protector report, state of capture report. What's your take? Have you had experience of it? Do you think it's real?
It is real. And the United Nations itself has grappled with the concept of state capture. And it's not happening only in South Africa, and it has not only happened in South Africa. The oligarchs in Russia have taken the state over. It has happened in other parts of the world. It's a scientific concept researched, and it exists. And it exists in South Africa. It happened pre-94. It is happening in a massive scale post-94. The saddest thing is we gave people of South Africa hope, false hope, in 1994. To date, the people of South Africa signed a social contract with the ANC saying we are giving you the authority to remove us from the shackles and oppression of economic injustices of the past. To date, the ANC had done worse than what the apartheid regime has done. It exists.
Okay, let me bring it in here, Zuki. So are we having the right conversation? Should there be a contest between old capture and new capture? How do you see this?
Izwelethu, Africa. I think I'm quite disturbed already by the lightness in which we're dealing with even the issue of apartheid. I mean, Anne is saying that, you know, it was something that was terrible policies and the TRC people apologized, and, you know, we have statements such as Ms. Mentor saying that, you know, what's happening now is worse than what's happening in apartheid. I think that is criminal, right? The kind of thinking and that we're having around, you know, this thing that happened. And because you must understand, when we put this in context, right, as Fred has said, state capture, there can't be talk of state capture outside of locating our dispossession, right, in 1652. right? And so 1994 happened, and as the revolution was suspended and betrayed. So my position, right, is is to say that one, state capture is date back to 1652, and for me it's kind of like there's no state that's not captured. The issue is not state capture per se, but the issue is in whose interest is the state being captured for. And we know that even we know that currently our understanding of state capture does not, the interest, it's not capturing the interests of the landless, dispossessed Azanian masses, right? And even the question of the Guptas is not to say that it would be irresponsible to say that actually the Guptas are not an issue, right? But it would also be careless of us to insist and continue to insist that this is the biggest problem about state capture we have in this country.
I want to bring you in here. I want to bring you in here, Themba. You were head of GCIS. You were there during the Mbeki era. People are saying this is not just starting with the Guptas, that it's becoming fashionable to just put the spotlight on the Guptas. There are a lot of deals that happened during that time that were also problematic. Tell us about your observation of state capture. Surely you didn't just experience it or observe it when you got that call from the president.
Let's simplify what we mean by state capture. It's essentially about an elite, few business people working with government people to get deals out of government for their own personal enrichment. They don't worry about the poor. So business people, government leaders, working together to get deals, get your tax money for their own personal benefit. In my experience, it was a question of the Guptas coming to me demanding government money, your money, to be used for their own private interests. So what this simply means, it's not concepts or anything. It's essentially about the ruling elite, the people that we elect, the people who are running businesses coming together, sometimes behind closed doors, discussing contracts, discussing deals, discussing laws, how to break laws, so that they can make money. That's what
Did it happen during the Mbeki era?
I think that it dates back a long time ago, and it happens all over the world. As it's been said, business people generally lobby government so that laws are changed to suit their interests. So it has a particular history.
So when Cyril and Tokyo were deployed into business, was that part of state capture?
Well, it wasn't state capture per se, but let's understand this. Business people working with politicians to steal money from the state coffers. And that has happened before. What makes the Gupta era more important is that when your own government elected by ordinary workers, ordinary people, uses the power that we give them to steal money from the state capture, from the state coffers. That's what makes this even more worrisome.
All right, help us bring it all together, especially the historical context. Because personally, as a South African, I'm not surprised that the apartheid state looted in order to further that ideology and keep people like myself poor. But just bring it all in, the historical context and the elite and that toxic relationship between business and politics.
Yeah, really, I think one of the problems we have is that we criminalize the activities of the poor, and I think we don't focus on the crimes of the very wealthy in this country. And there's absolutely no doubt, if we go back to the apartheid period, that very large corporations, very wealthy people work together with the apartheid state to accumulate a massive amount of wealth. We've seen that network not only in South Africa, but corporations across the globe. We must remember it's not only South Africans who made money out of a crime against humanity. And I think what's extraordinary, when we start to join the bigger dots together, we see that some of the same arms companies that supplied weapons to the apartheid state that resulted in the loss of lives of tens of thousands of people in Southern Africa were the same companies that the Mbeki administration was prepared to sign an arms deal with. That arms deal in the late 1990s resulted in the fact that the government said it didn't have money for antiretrovirals that cost the lives of almost 300,000 people. And if we start to shred that further, we find ourselves, somebody who was implicated in those arms deals is a man by the name of Jacob Zuma, who has spent the last 20 years trying to undermine many of our democratic institutions precisely because he doesn't want to be prosecuted by a weak prosecuting authority which has now been created. We've closed down the anti-corruption agencies when people like Ms. Mentor was in Parliament. They shut those institutions down, and so we aren't able to control this dynamic of state capture, and democracy suffers.
Floyd, what are we going to do about this?
Look, I think what has to happen is to introduce durable anti-capitalist program that has to define South Africa. The problem is that people think that it's either or, that if you are opposing the Guptas, you are therefore with white monopoly capital. If you're opposing white monopoly capital, you are therefore with the Guptas. We're opposing capitalism in all its manifestations. And the program of the EFF that says, let us expropriate first our land without compensation is a strategic move towards that attainment of economic freedom in South Africa. And the second issue is to take back the financial institutions, the wealth, the mines, and all of those things, and give them to the hands of the people so that they can be able to industrialize, create jobs for as many people as possible, and then we're able to live happily, all of us in South Africa.
All right, we'll expand on those ideas here from our activist. Mark Haywood is here, and I want to hear from you, Anne, because you've got particular ideas about the role of the state, and Mr. Manyi will also give you a chance to speak in our next segment. Is state capture an economic crime? If so, who should go to jail? What can we do about it? And how about using our X and our Y? Are you intrigued? Well, don't go away. Well, welcome back to the big debate on state capture. My name is Ridi Klabi, and we are in Braamfontein, Johannesburg. Now, can you and I do anything to unseat those who steal our tax money? Every 5 years, we have an X. But is that enough? What about Y? I'm talking about our youth. Let's start with a young person then who's in the audience. Can young people do anything in between elections to discipline unruly politicians and business leaders? I believe we do have a question from a young person in the audience. Prue, you've got the mic. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Rudy. I want to know, how do you and can you prosecute state capture? And once you've prosecuted, what's the penalty?
All right. There was a bit of noise there. Can you repeat your question?
Sure. I was saying, how do you and can you prosecute state capture? And if the people are found guilty, then what is the penalty?
I think, Henny, we can deal with that because you've documented this historical apartheid state capture, bringing in the multinationals. So what recourse is there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that we left helpless in a sense of all the crimes that happened in the late apartheid period, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I disagree with Anne, never really dug down into the nature of those networks. It was the original sin and the original crime that contaminated our democratic politics. And I think it's crucial to have a state that has the appetite to do this. If the state wished to, we have the finances, we have the investigators, we would have the intellectual power in a country like South Africa to be able to take on, and we have the law to take on interest groups, whether they date from the apartheid period or the current group of state capturers that are active today. But it's precisely because this group of people, and that cuts right across the board, this group of elites have tried to hollow out our democratic institutions, take away the capacity to criminalize elite crimes, and it leaves us vulnerable.
And I want your response here, because Floyd spoke about a system that the EFF advocates, the role of the state, where resources of the country go. You have particular ideas about the role of the state. Do you believe in the developmental state? Can we get anywhere with increased role of the state?
Look, firstly, I believe in the rule of law, and anyone who's committed a crime should be prosecuted, have due process, and if they're found guilty, they should go to jail, irrespective what position they hold in South Africa today. So I'm in favor of that, and we need to get out of the rumors, the leaks, the allegations. We need some facts that are proven in court, and people need to go to jail. So we need a public prosecutor who will actually take his job seriously. And we need some good policemen who get on the job of investigating. Certainly I would favor current crimes, but if they're old crimes, that's fine as well. So criminals should go to jail. That's the first thing. Your second question?
Just think about it for now. We'll come to you in a moment. We're going to our audience members. We'll start with you, Mark Gayton. Get ready. We're coming to you afterwards. Mark, what do you think?
Really, I think it's very important to draw a connection between state capture.
Okay, we need a mic. We need a microphone for Mark. Does anyone have a microphone? Very quickly, Gayton, get ready. I'm coming to you next. A microphone for Gayton while we're ready.
I think in this debate it's very important to draw the connection between state capture and the consequences for millions of ordinary people in this country. You know, I've spent the last few weeks at a trial in Limpopo in Polokwane concerning the death of a 5-year-old boy, Michael Kamape, who went to school and went to the toilet at break time and fell into a pit toilet and drowned at the bottom of that pit toilet, a 5-year-old boy. That school had been requesting new toilets for 4 years In that same year, 2014, when Michael died, 2.5 billion rand was stolen from the Limpopo Education Department. So when we have this discussion about state capture, we must also realize that it's not just the PRASA and the ESCOM, it's also parts of the health department, it's parts of the education department. And we have to put a stop to it, because otherwise our health system is going to be destroyed, our education system is going to be destroyed. So join the dots, but join the dots between the rich elite that are stealing and the poor people who are paying the price for the theft.
Oh, you've got a microphone, Gayton, what should business do? Does this concern you in any case? What about big deals that are being done between business and politicians? And I know you wanted to respond to Anne as well. Go ahead.
Yes, I think terrible things just happened here. Anne, you are Jewish, you are a Jew. You cannot come here and say to us black people we must move on if you are still celebrating the Holocaust every year. How will you feel if I tell Jewish people they must move on? I will be charged tomorrow, my name will be everywhere. So you must desist and refrain from telling black people to move on from today on. I want to make it very clear to you. To the second point I want to make.
Hold on.
The problem that we're having in the African National Congress and the other parties talking about state capture, they themselves don't even know what is state capture, so how can you stop something they don't know about? Let me explain state capture to you very quickly. For every 1 rand spent in this country, 50 cents come from the state. So if you want to see who has captured the state, you must go and look for all those 50 cents, who've got them, and the rents. The state has been captured by 2 families, mostly Rupert and the Oppenheimers, and bosses. Let me explain. Yes, the Guptas. When I was young, I was very naughty. I broke into a house with a friend of mine. He went to the fridge to steal the cheese. I went to the safe. So the Guptas basically went to the fridge. They stole the cheese. I am the Oppenheimers. I went to the safe in the room upstairs. So the Guptas. So we must not come here and talk about petty thieves. Let's talk about BHP Billiton. One example of state, I'll make you 2 examples of state capture.
We come into BHP Billiton in our next segment, but I want you to complete the points that you are making here.
I want to talk about BHP Billiton. BHP Billiton is paying 17 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. Everybody here pays 10 times more than BHP Billiton. Their contract comes from apartheid to 2020. They've now told some government members, no, they've got a supplement contract that runs until 2028. That's the first state capture. The second state capture is Bidvest. Everything in this country is being done by Bidvest. Ramaphosa has captured the state. So we must not come here and talk about petty criminals. The Guptas are small fry. Let us talk about the real white criminals. Thank you very much.
Gayton, shouldn't, Themba, you want to respond? Shouldn't we talk about all?
We will be making a big mistake as a nation if we are saying because other criminals stole money, therefore the new criminals must be allowed to steal. Can I finish the point? You have made the point.
Let him finish.
I'm saying to you, yes, under apartheid, a lot of the big companies stole money, made money out of the resources of this country, right? No argument there. It does not mean that when people today, you and I, start stealing money from the state coffers, it makes it right. It's wrong. We got to make sure that the public resources that are available there, but I'm saying that when we're talking about state capture and corruption, let's deal with it irrespective of who's doing it.
Do you accept, hold on, Gayton, as a businessman yourself, and you've spoken quite openly and proudly about your wealth, that you didn't steal it, you work hard for it, having spent years in prison, I grant you that. Do you accept that there is a point at which people who are wealthy must step back and think about the issues that Mark Haywood raised, yeah?
No doubt about it.
People do you consider yourself politically, sorry, I didn't give you a microphone. Do you consider yourself politically connected? Should you be doing deals with the state?
I have no tender with the state. I got no deal with the South African state. My issue is I'm very poor in comparison to my white peers. The question I would like to ask Mr. Maseko, he said the Guptas asked him to spend some of his money, some of the budget he has. Yeah.
All of it.
Now I'm asking you, who are you spending it on? Because I know I'm going to tell you if you're not being honest.
Well, let's
Who
understand.
gets your budget? Who gets your budget? Multi-choice. Get your budget. Multi-choice. Get your budget.
Temba, you need to answer. You need to answer that. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. Is state capture? We'll give everybody a chance. Everybody's raising their hands now. We're going to get to you in just a moment. Is state capture with us to stay, or are we about to flush it down the drain? It doesn't look like it from what we are seeing. You're watching The Big Debate. We'll carry on with our discussion in a moment. Welcome back to The Big Debate on State Capture with me, Ridi Kabi, on SABC2 and SAFM. Now, after today's show, we will be here in the studio for another hour. If you want to continue watching, go to our Facebook page or to the SABC News YouTube channel. We'll be taking your inputs from home, and we're going to hear final word from our studio audience. And I must just say that we did invite the ruling party, the African National Congress. In the beginning of our negotiation, it looked like they were coming to join us, but ultimately nobody was available to talk about state capture. If anyone has seen them, please send me a tweet. We'd like to have them here. Let's hear from a business leader in South Africa, Danisa Baloyi. Can you put the microphone close? Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think the problem I'm grappling with tonight's show is that I think it's not very balanced. It should have been a little bit more balanced. So let me make that
In what way? Can you elaborate?
No, I just think even from your intro, you were a little biased. You should, if you want to talk about state capture, talk about it from all angles. And I've seen that when you argue with the presenters, your view is one way. So that's my first point. But let's go to the point.
I haven't given a view, and in our insert, we gave the historic role of the mining sector. We brought Henny here precisely because he's analyzed the looting by the apartheid state. But anyway, we can continue this conversation another time. Yeah?
I think Floyd at least came with a balance when he spoke about both historical and current. And if we see elements of that, they are both bad.
Which is what has been said repeatedly, yeah?
Already, please.
You are making an accusation, so I'm trying to set it right.
Yeah, the problem with the debate and the narrative in South Africa today is that we tend to highlight one aspect of it and not all of it. If something is bad and it's chronic within our society, let's deal with it in all its aspects.
What do you think should happen?
I really think the debate should be opened up. It should be opened up. We should hold no prisoners. If it is the current, as Maseko said, is the current milieu that is a problem, let's talk about it, but not one way. Let us not shield business, and I come from business. Let us not shield business like we tend to do. State capture, we want to say, because it's the state, it's just government that is problematic. Yet we rarely want to talk about problems coming out of business, because most of us are employed by business already.
All right. I think we have dealt with the mining, the history of mining, the Oppenheimers, and so on. No. Obviously, that as a microcosm of what is happening in South Africa. But okay, we hear you. We'll continue that in the second segment. Let's just give other people a chance. Dennis George from Fedusa, thank you very much. You can ask your question. Oh, by the way, sorry, I must say that we invited the president, we invited the Guptas, we invited Brian Molefe, so that they can also contribute to this narrative. They didn't take up the invitation. So sometimes when people are not here, it's not because we don't want to hear them, but for some reason they don't want to participate in the debate.
Yeah. Look, I think we must just prosecute all the thieves, all the business people that stolen, the old people, the new people. Look at our young people. 4 million of them can't find jobs because these people want to make more profits at the back of that, and that is very important. But I think we must prosecute them, and I think without we can also do private prosecution.
My concern is, as a member of the ANC, ex-member of the ANC, it is the state at that time, during the Mbeki years even, that refused to go after some of the companies that benefited from apartheid. That is the truth. It is them that frustrated these prosecutions that should have happened. So where does the blame lie? And the next question is, when do we move from debate? We're hearing the hearings in Eskom. Those are not anonymous sources. We've got the former chairperson of Eskom himself saying that there was an attempt to capture. We have Brian Molefe conceding that there was something problematic about this infamous contract. We had was it just 2 days ago when Minister Ibrahim Patel said they're taking Oak Bay to court unless it pays the 263 million. So what I'm saying is we're beyond the realm of rumor and conjecture. There is palpable evidence and it points to certain people. Is that not so?
That's why you need a prosecutor and police to look into this.
So you're saying that the reason they're not being prosecuted is not because there's no evidence, because the institutions are weak?
The institutions from the very top are captured.
You know, like part of the whole state capture phenomenon that is expressed through the Zupta-led criminal syndicate was to weaken the NPA, right? But we must constantly dismiss the capitalist logic, the capitalist gangster logic that is being said by Gayton, that if these ones have stolen, you must close an eye on these other ones who are stealing now. We must attend to them equally. All of them, we must take decisive action on all the capitalist criminals. We must not choose that this one has done this. All of them are wrong. But the monies that Guptas are stealing is not small money. It's billions of rands that have been shifted out of this country to Dubai. There's evidence there. The Reserve Bank has brought that to the attention of the prosecuting authority, but they're not doing anything because they're captured as well. It's a reality that we must deal with. We must not underestimate.
We're going to hear from you in the next segment. In the next segment, we're going to hear from you. After the break, the last word from our panel. We'll see you just now. Welcome back to the big debate. We're looking for solutions to state capture. Now, my panel, this is your last chance to really reach out to the people of South Africa and to our leaders. What is your message? And very quickly, we're going to squeeze some comments from community leaders. But let's give him Zwanele Man. You haven't spoken since we started. Go ahead.
No, I think we're misleading the public. We're misleading the public because we've narrowed the state capture into either government, business, or Guptas. State capture is important to say what is the state. It's the judiciary is part of it. Parliament is part of it, government is part of it.
Wait, no, naughty corner for you. Let him finish.
Therefore, when we deal with the state capture, we must deal with all the elements of the state.
You've got 20 seconds.
How much is judiciary? In fact, judiciary has actually managed it better because we also have an appeal. Because we could have a situation where judges at the High Court could be biased. And by the way, there's case law around that. Sometimes you can even ask them to recuse themselves or whatever. But the issue is that you have a bias, sometimes even at the judiciary level. You also have parliament that can be captured. Why is it that you have a parliament that when...
okay, parliament and judiciary is captured, your 40 seconds is up. I'm sorry. Zukisa?
I'm saying they can be captured.
Zukisa?
Okay, so I think part of the problem is the dishonesty, not even the dishonesty, but we have an inconsistent politics in terms of the people who are taking up political positions. So when Floyd is saying that how we overcome state capture, for example, is taking back the land, he must clarify us if we're taking some of the land or unoccupied land or whatever is happening, right? Because part of the problem also is that when we go back into our communities and we organize them, we are misinforming the people that we are supposed to lead, and we are allowing the propaganda machine in this country to run wild. We need to understand that the ruling government is not necessarily the ruling class in this country, and we cannot ever separate what the Noble Sun Foundation is saying around state capture, going back to the original sin, which is dispossession.
Well, for me, I want to say two things. Firstly, I do not understand why something criminal, we want to call it state capture. South Africa has passed a piece of legislation, Prevention and Combat of Corrupt Activities Act of 2004. Now, if people have committed a crime, apply that act. That's the first issue. Secondly, I agree with Floyd that the Guptas have done wrong things, and we can't ignore that. But I also think that this country faces a massive socio-economic crisis, which dates back to the time when mines, particularly discovery of gold and diamonds, started. Now, that's what we need to be dealing with. And we can't put the Guptas as the primary strategic issue that is facing the country today.
Gayton, no, you're not getting more time. Henny, you've given up your closing argument to this gentleman. Tell us where you come from, a mining community, quickly.
Okay, my name is Mishak Mbangula from Makua, Mining Africa. we as communities are only gaining, or we were left with the legend of recession and junk status. And we've been living on this junk status for a long time. And now what is happening, we are, as South Africa, we are sort of in a automatic pilot, which is, it doesn't have a direction where it's going, and leave us with nothing but suffering. So what we are saying is we need a revolution. We don't need, because we believe this is a sort of a coup, a silent coup.
Quickly, the last seconds to you.
We're debating as if there's no victims. We forget that the victims in this room is silent. There are school children not getting school books. There are people dying in hospitals. The Isidimeni process, 134 people died because of corruption, and we shouldn't forget about that. OUTA is in courts to make sure that this is stopped.
Your 40 seconds. Your 40 seconds.
There's 7.5 million people aged 15 to 35 who are not in school, they're not in training, and they're not in employment. They're doing nothing and going absolutely nowhere. That is criminal. There are people we have elected under our democratic constitution, and we trusted them to govern this country in the interests of everybody, especially the poor. And that is not happening. Many people are looting and helping the private sector and themselves to get incredibly rich at the expense of all the victims that you're talking
Themba
about.
hasn't had his chance. Very quickly, Floyd.
Quickly, Reddy, I'm laughing because Jimmy is using the semi-literate Zuma's
Zwane.
narrative of a rebuttal of state capture, and that is laughable. I mean, it's so sad. Now, the permanent solution to state capture in South Africa will come with the absolute defeat of the ANC. The ANC must be removed from political power. The people of South Africa must take charge of their own country, take back the land, take back the mines, let's take back the banks, and deliver economic freedom in our lifetime.
Closing argument, quickly. All right, Fakey, quickly. Fakey's closing argument, Fakey, quickly. Quick.
From yesterday and today, Fish, S&P, Moodley downgraded us. Billions have been siphoned out of South Africa, both at the touch of the button and physically through money bags.
10 seconds.
No, please, my last second.
We are rolling the
2019,
You'll be shut down now.
Vote the ANC out of power.
He said that. Quickly, Themba, quickly.
My message to everyone sitting around this room, hold your leaders accountable.
Thank you. Hold your leaders accountable. That's where we'll end it with Themba Maseko. State capture has damaged our democracy. Ministers and CEOs have lost their jobs, and we have lost money and trust. It started hundreds of years ago, but it went crazy. Can we put an end to the rot? Do we have leaders we can trust to lead us out of this mess? You decide. Thank you for watching The Big Debate. Thank you very much. And stay with us right now on Facebook Live and SABC YouTube. See you next week. Well, we did tell you at the start of the big debate that we've got a second segment, or perhaps a continuation of our debate. It's some sort of workshop which is streaming live on SABC, YouTube, and Facebook. You can continue to tweet us and participate in our conversation. And for our audience members and panelists and everybody else who feel that they didn't have a say, there are people watching you right now, and we can capture the comments and the narrative that you wanted to speak. But to help me along in this segment, we have Professor William Gumede, and he's going to come forward to tell us what happens next.
Thank you, Reddy. Thank you, audience. What we're going to do, in this part of what we'll allow the community also to engage in this part of the session. I mean, we will still engage with the panelists. Some of the panelists may leave, and someone who wants to leave. I mean, of course, we would really want everyone to stay along. So what I'm going to try to do is really to try to get as many people to speak, and then just the same rules apply. Please, when you speak, one comment or one question in order to allow everyone else to speak. I'm a teacher, so anyone who goes over it, I will send you out. I won't do it as in Parliament where they carry you out with security. We won't do that, and so on. So just be disciplined. So I don't know, really now, what we'll do is there's going to be a lull so that those who want to go can go.
Well, they'll indicate to us if they want to go. I mean, we've got investigative journalists who are the people who we're researching and have come with the information that we're all discussing. So we're going to give you a chance to speak. And I'm particularly interested, William, in getting a response to the issue that was raised by somebody who comes from the community and was affected, because it's very important that we go beyond the theory and we look at the people who are affected by inequality, by poverty, by corruption, and by weak institutions as raised by Anne.
Okay. All right. So everyone is going to stay here. I'm very happy with that. So let me start. I mean, what I'll do is I think I'll summarize just in a minute, 30 seconds.
Or perhaps we can start with giving people who didn't get a chance to give their closing argument. I think, Themba Maseko, we gave you about 5 seconds. And Fakey, I interrupted your closing argument as well. I think you had, the two of you had 20 seconds to share. Carry on making the point you wanted to make, Themba.
Well, thank you. So you're getting an extra chance now.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
He had 6 seconds.
I was basically arguing that all of us need to hold our leaders accountable, because when people get into power, irrespective of what political party they're in, they tend to be close to their friends who are in business. They end up giving business to their friends, and that's where corruption or capture happens. So hold your leaders accountable, all of them. Okay. That's the point I wanted to make.
I was interested in hearing that Gaten, and I'll give you I'm not asking you the question, I'm just summarizing something that you said and asking someone else to respond, and then you'll come in later. Talking about the extent of state capture, you basically were quantifying it, saying that the Guptas have taken cheese, right? Taking cheese. When you compare it, the whites have the jewelry and the Guptas have taken cheese. I mean, is that something that persuades you that this is, he didn't say insignificant, but he's saying on the bigger scheme of things, it's not.
You know, in the era in which we thought we have been unshackled ourselves from the very misdemeanors of apartheid, injustice, exploitation, we enter an era where we vote a party into power, hoping that the lives of ordinary people like these communities would get better. 23 years down the line, you may kill me if you want to, their lives are actually worse. The last time we were downgraded, the way we were yesterday and today, was under apartheid. We had hoped that our government, elected by the people, for the people, would make sure that that would be a thing of the past. When I counted 6 months ago, 350 billion had been unaccounted
that's the cheese,
for.
Right?
That's actually the jewelry. That's the jewelry. 350 billion were unaccounted for right through the government sector only. Monies that should have built hospitals, that should have looked after the SDMedi people. For the first time since apartheid, money that were never touched, 350 million, that were never touched for disaster management. The Treasury decided to take them. As a result, there were floods in KZN. There were no proper warnings. 11 people died. Our water situation right now is in a very bad situation. There is no money to do anything about that, because where is our money? It has gone between business people and government.
Is it that, I mean, I really do want us to give community people a hearing here. I'm getting a sense from what Fakey is saying and what you are saying, that people are taken aback by state capture in a post-democratic era, because that's not what you expected. With the apartheid looters, you should read Henny van Vuuren's book, because from page 1, you hear about an apartheid era president giving an instruction that the shredders must go off, meaning the evidence, right, of state capture. Right now, do you care how much money has been wasted? Does it help us to quantify it? Do we have a sense? And is that material to the conversation around state capture?
I just come in. I mean, you just have to think about this. And now I'm here talking from an academic point of view. When we talk about white monopoly capital, now if every year in our state alone, 300 billion rand in the state goes away.
To someone. or some people.
Now, if you
business.
calculate, let's just say if you calculate from 1994 and we calculate until now, every year, just that one amount. Now, if you then put another amount of money just wasted, so, you know, the money is not, it's just wasted, nobody cares. It's just wasted. We can add another 300 billion rand. Huh? Now, what it then means, it means it is very significant. So even if we put aside white monopoly capital and we say, let's put it aside, let's use the money just in the States. So if we just use the monies in the States, we can make a very big difference. But maybe what I'll do is let's get to the community and let's make, you know, for people to make contributions. Before I get to you, Mandy, so let me get. Do you understand up? Is there a mic for you?
Yeah,
to move off the mic.
Hold on,
there's one.
You
Yeah,
need that as
yeah,
a moderator. Where's the yellow microphone? Somebody has captured my yellow microphone. There it is.
And if you talk, no, there's going to be a question. But remember, we now, you know, we're the moderators here.
Right.
You
We're
know,
coming
ask the
to you.
questions.
We're
Yeah, we
coming
come
to
to
you.
you. Yeah.
I'll make sure you get.
I think. Thank you for giving chance to speak, because when I'm sitting here, I was amazed at why I'm here, because we were not given chance to raise our issues as community, as poor community living from rural areas. Now, the burden is that we are listening to people who are in the cheese. We are out of the cheese. We are not even close to the cheese. We are told about people who are in the cheese, not us. That cheese does not refer to us. We are in a poverty. Actually, we are the fifth citizens.
Let's hear you.
We are the fifth citizens in South Africa, rural people in South Africa, because we are not taken serious, we are not careful, there's nothing that happens. Now, it's disappointing to see the same government that we thought is illegitimate being comparison to the apartheid government and say it's a looting of apartheid and the Inyenyu government. It's a disgusting. For us, it's disgusting that our trust we gave to this government, and they are looting on behalf of us. And we say it's an apartheid. We must compete with apartheid issues. I think we are at the wrong. There's something wrong with our minds and something wrong with our moral. Okay. I can't listen to this issue.
I'm going to be talking on land, and I'm a victim, Jimmy Shebakam, of white monopoly capital. In the apartheid era, I was working and I was okay. And when government came into place, there was Commonwealth money, 200 million US dollars, which was put on my head. And my husband died for that. A Nigerian and a councillor from Dobsonville. I hope all of you know that case where a Nigerian was bullying the magistrate, bullying the prosecutor, bullying myself. And why I'm saying Manyi must look this side is I was using my father's place as security that I can improve other people's lives. That money was given to Ntatembeki that we can change Alexander. I did the Alexander renewal and the Pankop place. And right now as we speak, the Nigerian doesn't get arrested, and this is how my leg becomes when I go to the public protector.
I want to be sure that we understand you correctly. I can hear the emotion and the hurt and the trauma. Am I understanding correctly that you were supposed to receive repatriation, what's the word, the English? Reparation, I beg your pardon. Reparation money for land that you lost.
Yes.
Restitution,
No.
right? Yeah,
it was business. We built 3 shopping centers in Soweto with Colliers RMS, which was controlled by Fetshaw. Then it got controlled by Investec. Because my husband died on duty, he was killed by 2 colleagues, the ones who planned his death. I was supposed to be earning something from COEDA. There is so much corruption in the Labor Department, and I'm putting my head on a block, challenging Ntate Cyril Ramaphosa. I gave him everything. And I got hurt after giving him this. I was hurt by the securities and the public protector.
It was reparations. That's what I understand. Reparations. Themba, I want you to speak to this. I mean, what is coming out here are broken people and history. That the neglect of these communities started way back, not just with dispossession during apartheid, but the promise of a democracy did not do for you what you wanted to do, right? Did I get you correctly?
I think we've let our people down, because when we won our freedom, we went into government with a clear understanding that our job in government, and I'm not speaking of government here, I'm saying we understood our job as being to improve the lives of ordinary people. But as soon as people get into power, power gets into their heads and people start thinking about personal interest. Now, if we were a pure people's government, the needs and requirements of people would have been uppermost in our heads. We'd have forgotten about doing deals with business people, whether they call themselves the new business people or the old ones, and made sure that the taxes that we are collecting every single day benefit ordinary people. And that's why it becomes very important for us to say we're going to hold our leaders accountable from now onwards, whether they are EFF, ANC, DA, or whatever. When somebody gets elected into positions of power, what they must do first before anything else is to say, what am I going to do each and every single day to improve the lives of ordinary people? Our problem in this country is that we tend to have what is called personality cults. If we believe in somebody, we think they can't do wrong. The lesson of the past 20 years is saying to me, everybody is capable of doing wrong things, and let's hold everybody, however much we like them today, let's hold them accountable. When we put that X and say we are putting you there to make sure that you put the interests of our people first, we would not have these kinds of problems.
You know, it just also seems our minds are also captured. I mean, if people are saying, you know, business is being captured, the state, but also our minds are captured, what do we do? I'm going to bring it, you know, to another community leader.
My case dates back to the apartheid era. This hand you see here, I was injured. 10 limbless men walked in 1981. Were fired. I used to work for the then South African Railways and Harbours. 10 limbless men ran down by rail coaches while on duty. We walked to the offices of the advocate. He was an attorney by then, prior to him being an advocate. Ismail Ayub. He was downtown Bree Street. Our representatives was Bishop Desmond Tutu, Ismail Ayub, and the late Sheena Duncan. I was the only one fortunate guy because I used to stay in the township. The 9 all other people who used to stay in the then TBVC states, if you remember, Sky. Those people were fired with no scent, with a person with both legs out and a leg or 9 of them. They are known in the offices of the Transnet, which is now Transnet. As of now, I was fired in 1981. For 36 years I've been out of work. I was injured in 1977. I worked 4 years after my injury. And then in 1981, a word call came out from the general manager of the then South African Railways, saying, I'll mention it in Afrikaans, al die kaffers wat beseerd is in diens, hulle moet onmiddellik afgedank word. That is that. He was saying those words to Ismail Ayub when he was yet an attorney. He closed the shut the phone onto him. He didn't say anything. That was that. Then the poor people, they just left because they used to stay in the compounds. So I was the only one because I used to stay in the township. I was fortunate for that. So nothing up until now. I'm with this Kulumani support group for the reparations of apartheid victims. That is that nothing has happened. So do something.
So clearly, you know, just in terms of, you know, in terms of reparations, so the money lost, well, we could have used the money for reparations.
Do you want to speak?
Sanibonani, mina ngizokhuluma ke ngoba lesinwa ngisikhona. Ngiyacela manje ngicela uke ningincede. Ngize la ngisuka eMiddelburg, eMpumalanga. Ngizocela ningincede. Ngaphansi kwemayini, le mayini le ishanduka isebenzisana nayo le mayini leyo. Le mayini le yase engaphansi nawuya eWheatbank. le mine lena ingitirizele yangidirizela ngakhala yahamba yawisa amafestere yawisa yonke into yahamba ngalungisa ibuyile manje leso sikhathi beyingikhipha ngagcina ngikhala ngithi angisafuna ukuphuma ngoba umuzi wami uyaphela ibuyile manje le mayini idubula isangikhiphi manje ngoba iyangibona ukuthi angifuna ukuphuma idubula ngilapha endlini kukhale wonke umuntu ngize ngibambelele ngamatafula ngendlela idubula ngakhona akekho ngincedako yile le kuthe kume kulo kanje yethu azange bancede kwaba neparlamente lapha ngaye eparlamente ngasibika leso sikhalo sami iparlamente babuyene lisprayed bathi bazokunceda.
Okay.
I
would like several people. There are several people who I think should respond to this. Henny, it reminds me of a theme that you address in your book. She's mentioning Shanduka mine owned by Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. I know in your book you also talk about the history of Lonmin and how that company and those who founded it didn't do nadering to the apartheid state, but attached themselves to the new elites. Now, here's the result: forgotten and neglected people, people treated like they just don't exist. That is the reality. And she wants to know what can be done about it, because the mining houses, Sanduga in particular, are going in and ignoring people. Floyd,
you know, like outside of the rhetoric and all of these things of debating concepts and everything. So the last time we participated in the big debate was here in the studios. There was a young man who was sitting in the corner there on a wheelchair, and then he raised these concerns, and we made a commitment then that we're going to make follow-up on that issue. And we made follow-up on him, got him the electronic wheelchair, got him to school, and did everything else that he had raised in this platform. So I don't want to do into theoretical rhetoric in terms of what we can do. We're here with the chairperson of Johannesburg of the EFF. Of all the people who came from communities that are raising genuine issues that affect them personally, we can take that up as the EFF, and not for votes purposes. We can take that up, all of those issues, because we've got a paralegal office here in 78 De Corte Street, which is our head office, where people come for free. We offer legal advice and intervene more specifically on cases that affect people. And that is not an electioneering intervention. It's one of the things that we do. So I would plead that with those that have got the case of Mama there, the case of Baba here, and everyone else there, we can make concrete interventions, make follow-up with the relevant authorities. We have got access at least to parliaments and at all levels to the municipality here in Johannesburg. We can make follow-up in areas where we can intervene. And if it requires lawyers, we always have got lawyers on standby who can make interventions on all of those issues.
If the ANC,
so it must not just be a talk for nothing.
Sure.
It must be concrete interventions that we can make.
If the ANC, DA, you take up the challenge, these are South Africans. Sure. You can take that up. But Mark, I do want to come to you on that, because I see Kulumani is also here as well. You were on a cycle tour meeting ordinary South Africans. You were busy with the textbook saga and talk basically the material cost of neglect when the state retreats, and these are the people who are not being heard. Is that what's happening? What can we do about it?
Because we have a massive problem in our country. We have a fantastic constitution.
We need a microphone. We need a microphone. Sorry, can we? Okay.
We have a great constitution which gives power to ordinary people. And you can see that power, for example, in the struggle that we had over antiretroviral treatment. We fought for antiretroviral treatment against the resistance of Thabo Mbeki and the ANC. Today we have 4 million people on antiretroviral treatment because we fought for our rights. But the problem is, although we have a good constitution, very few poor people have access to legal services and access to lawyers. So one of the discussions that we should be having is how do we get civil society organizations like my organization, Section 27, other organizations, to work together, and to work together with what Floyd has just said, with political parties like the EFF, to make sure that wherever there's an injustice, we don't postpone that injustice to 10 years' time, or 5 years' time, or 3 years' time. We say, let's deal with that injustice now, and let's remedy the injustice now. Let me say one last thing, Ridi. You know, the Life Esidimeni issue, where we now know 143 people died. The full story of Life Esidimeni must still come out, but it had to do with corruption. But that Life Esidimeni arbitration would not be taking place if it wasn't for civil society organizations that made partnerships with the families of the people who died and said, let us represent you to make sure that we find justice. So we have to seek justice now.
Konati hasn't spoken. I know
Maybe if I can come in, I mean, if
Okay.
you can, this is one of our journalists here who's been talking about the costs of corruption. I mean, if you can just quickly give us just, I mean, the costs of corruption.
Before I give you the cost of corruption, Floyd Shibambu talks about accountability. He must start by accounting for the death of the NPA that he lamented earlier and said the reason there's no prosecutions now is because the NPA has been weakened. He should first stand up and apologize to the people of South Africa. Him and the ANC Youth League at the time, together, led by Comrade Julius Malema.
We'll give Floyd a chance to apologize.
They stood up and said, they would, the NPA needed to die and they would kill for Jacob Zuma. And what did die was the National Prosecuting Authority. Today it's coming to bite all of us, including himself as the South Africans we are. We killed the law enforcement agencies in this country. And Floyd Shibambu and the leadership of the ANC Youth League and the ANC at the time must account for that. Whatever political party they are in today, we need to acknowledge the past before we can know where we are going. Now,
we'll give you a chance
Mark
to say
Haywood
sorry. I
spoke.
see you're dying to say sorry. Konati, carry on, please.
Now, Mark Haywood spoke about Michael Komapi. Mike Haywood spoke about Michael Komapi, who died in Limpopo, the 5-year-old boy. And the education department had been looking for money to be able to build the toilets, the infrastructure. Now, 2 billion rand, as he pointed out, was wasted. They're stolen by people who say it's our turn to eat now. We'll sit with the Guptas at the table. He says it's our turn to eat. Jimmy said it.
I have to respond.
Let him finish. He has to respond and defend himself. Okay, finish your point, and then we have to give him a chance.
I will. At the very beginning of the show, at the very start of the show, Mr. Mani said, we are sitting at the table with the Guptas because we have disrupted this. Now, allow me to move on.
He said, okay,
the
he
2
said
billion
that
rand.
White Monopoly Capital has been at the table.
And that we have joined them at the table to eat.
The Guptas have joined them.
I didn't say that.
Let's move on. The 2 billion rand.
Okay, let's give him
the 2.
No, wait, Gates.
The
You
2
don't have a mic.
billion
We're not
rand
gonna hear you
that
anyway.
the 2 billion rand that has been stolen.
Of course.
The 2 billion rand that was stolen from the education department when Michael Komapi died and the department could not provide schools, that could have built 20,000 RDP houses at a cost of 100,000 rands each. These are the houses. I'm talking about the more expensive one with tiles on the roof, not Amazink. 100,000 rands per house. I'm talking about proper houses. Lucky Montana here was chief executive of PRASA. Between 2012 and 2015, the National Treasury said 4 billion rand of South Africans' money was lost from that department. And it said from that company, and the National Treasury said on the 21st of June this year, that 4 billion rand that is still not been accounted for. The chairman of PRASA at the time, who was Lucky Montana's boss, is Sifiso Buthelezi. He's today chairman of the Public Investment Corporation, must be prosecuted for the corruption that happened there. Lucky was leading that company. Now, the 4 billion rand that was lost there, unaccounted for, could have built 40,000 RDP houses at 100,000 rands each. Lastly, Lucky Montana here spoke about accountability. The National Treasury, which is under the leadership of Malusi Gigaba and Sifiso Buthelezi, audited 216 contracts done during Lucky Montana's tenure. Only 13 of them were above board. The rest lost us 4 billion rand, which could have built, I repeat, 40,000 RDP houses and enough schools and infrastructure. Lucky Montana today talks about accountability. Of course, he's not going to prosecute himself because Floyd helped kill the NPA.
No, we must give, hold on. Everybody, we've got, there's got to be an order. No, Gayton, wait. The first accusation, no, let's be fair. The first accusation was to Floyd. The second one was to you. And the last one was to you. So what saith?
That's right. You know, you're a respected journalist and you have just humiliated yourself by spectacularly misrepresenting reality, because we never said, even when the ANC clicked, that the NPA must die. I give a challenge today that you go retrieve a report or a record somewhere that says that the EFF said or the ANC click said. So that what is that saying now is absolute nonsense.
I'm going to challenge you.
So his memory is spectacularly failing him.
Wait, Floyd. You may not have said it, but you supported moves to weaken it. You may not have said it, but you supported moves.
What we did when we formed the EFF, what we did publicly, when we launched the EFF in Marikana, we apologized to the people of South Africa for bringing a disaster called Jacob Zuma. Okay. And we have apologized. That one has been dealt with.
And everything that came with him, was that
yes,
the weakening of the NPA?
Everything else that
the death of the NPA.
But we never demanded for the death of the NPA.
Well, maybe not in words, but in your actions. Okay, Mzwanele must
journalists must have at least proper record.
Yeah.
Your memory must not fail you.
You are a real politician.
Yeah, I think your memory must not fail you.
Mzwanele, there was an accusation made where you must...
I think 2 points. Firstly, I think I'm really disappointed by Skonati. You see, Skonati represents...
He's smiling, he doesn't
represents what monopoly capital media. This is what they do. What we're sitting with here today, we're sitting with 60 billion rand that has been in illicit financial outflows that Skonati does not write about. This is a 60 billion rand that has been stolen by what monopoly capital is reported by SARS, but no one does anything about it and doesn't write about it. The reason government does not always have enough money is because of tax evasion and everything else by what monopoly capital. Now, when it comes to the issues of eating, when it comes to the issue of the Guptas, I'm saying, as we sit here and now, this is a very interesting point. As we sit here and now, I'm in court over a tweet. Now, I'm saying to people, if the Guptas have done what people say they've done, I'm not defending them. Why don't we just take them to the court? Why don't we have them prosecuted?
It is
do that. I'm in court. I'm in court over a tweet. I'm in court over a tweet. Why don't we take the Guptas to court for the things they're accusing them of?
Corruption against the Guptas everywhere.
People have done that.
No, they have not. They've never been to court on that.
We opened the case in the Johannesburg police station there, and the Guptas were not arrested. We opened the case in Roseburg police station.
Take them
the
to
Guptas were not arrested.
Bring evidence. No. I think this is the issue.
Hold on. Let us finish.
This is the issue. This is the issue. This is how the law works in this country. To go around reporting is not enough. What you must do when you report, you must bring evidence, the evidence that leads to prosecution. That's what you must do.
Can I ask you one question? Hold on, let's ask Mzwanele one question. Do you regard, to be factual, matters have been reported to the police? Yes, that's what, hold on. He's making an important point about the fact that the matters haven't reached court, but there could be a number of reasons for that, the weakening of the institutions, NPA and all. What I want to ask you is, what is coming out of Parliament, not from journalists, but from Eskom itself, Eskom executives themselves, the fall of Bell Pottinger, SAP, McKinsey and all that. Do you regard that as evidence? Is that something that concerns you at all? The stuff that is coming out from Eskom executives themselves?
Ryan has made a very important point in that Parliament. He said that is scratching the surface. If you want to get to the depth of this thing, get to all the white monopoly capital companies that are eating there.
Lucky, the third Gayton, the third accusation was to Lucky let him... And then Zukisa hasn't spoken as well.
I wish I would have spoken before he made this intervention, because I wanted to raise a number of things before that accusation, because I don't think that I want to deal with that. Firstly, let me assure the comrades from who work for the South African Railway and Harbours, because one of the things that happened in the democratic state, in 2001, you remember that black workers were not covered, were not even getting pensions. The state was not making a contribution for these workers, only white workers. But that was corrected by legislation, which means workers like you, including those in the TBV, former TBV states, should have their money. And I think what Floyd said is commendable. And I think that I would assist even the EFF to get some of the information about how best that you get that. So that is one part. The second issue that I want to deal with, Themba makes an important point, but we need to be very careful. The big debate must enable us to have a informed, rational debate and discussions. We must examine issues. I mean, let me take two issues. And for the journalist, I think that he hasn't even looked at the facts. The first fact is that it was said PRASA didn't lose 4 billion rand. It was said PRASA had 14 billion rand of irregular expenditure. But and Mark has repeated the same point, that there's 200 million rand stolen, because the easy way to use is looting and stealing. Okay? Now let me clarify it briefly so that we can deal with the issue. There are people who are stealing and who should be arrested. I think Dennis made that very good point. But not every amount of irregular expenditure means that money has been stolen. For example, let's deal with health, Mark, where you are. A CEO in a hospital buys medication. That medication is given to people, served to them. 8 months down the line, an auditor comes to the hospital and says, yes, medication has been bought for 200 million. It has been served to people. But it says, CEO, when you bought that medication, you are meant to follow 5 steps. You followed 1, 2, you jumped 3, you jumped 4, and you did 5. Okay? What should happen? And in South Africa, then they write, CEO stole 200 million rands. And all of us, we fight about that. Whereas the real thing is that there's a mechanism to deal with that. Now, I think what we should be doing is that, and I think you must go and look, if you are a real journalist, you'd say that Lucky Montana actually wrote a 20-page letter to Parliament asking for a same inquiry on PRAS in the same way, to actually prove that that not only is 12 billion of the 14 billion rand irregular actually very wrong, okay? It was a proxy to fight a particular battle. The Speaker of Parliament never responded and never instituted that, because I'm not afraid. Yeah, let me make my last point. Let me make my last point.
Okay.
I was accused. I'm challenging him to say, I'm not going to interfere with him. He must go and write a story having taken everything into account, and he must make a distinction between what was stolen, what is irregular, what is wasteful. But I think that we need to have a proper, informed discussion as South Africans, not the noise that you are making.
No Marasha. Hold on. No Marasha.
I'm so very disappointed by our leaders. That is the first thing which I'm going to say. All our political leaders, which we put them in Parliament. I'm coming from Kulumane, which is a membership-based organization of all these members who are voting for our leaders to be in Parliament, to talk for us, to be accountable. There's accountability which has been put. We did make sure that we make our leaders to be accountable. We are now 20 years being in this Kulumane, giving the direction to our leaders how they should look at this debt capture, which now is bring by big debate on us as a grassroots level. We've been talking about it from long time, from the day one, when our democratic government took place, to say that, yes, we have voted you. But now we see that there are multi-companies. When the lady was talking about TRC, this side, of which it was just a first step towards starting the process of trying to heal or to talk about the past. But because it was the process which was going to help the community from the grassroots level, they close it.
Okay.
And we say that the multi companies must be held accountable. Must be held accountable because what they did, they went away with the investment, including mine industries, all this. And today's government is still doing the same of taking whatever wealthy which is supposed to be given to help the poor. They are not doing. Now is the third culprit, which is Gupta. We must go back and ask all this to plow back the fruit to the grassroots level.
I think it's important. We'll give you I just want to summarize. I think it's very important that everyone knows the wonderful work that Noma Russia does in Thokoza with victims of apartheid era looting, sexual violence, and all of that. And over the years, they've been knocking at government's door to ask that they implement some of the recommendations of the TRC, including going after the multinationals that have benefited. They did that. But the government of a democratic South Africa has been shutting the door to them.
Yeah. That's what they do. And don't care.
William, can we get him and give Zukiswa a chance to speak? She hasn't spoken. And then wait. Beki Michael Anabab. Yep.
No, I say abonga ke nathi ukuthola ke leli thuba sikhulumana. Ya kusho ukuthi ke igovernment yethu ke vela isenzeli nothing. Uzuma ungathi ke thina sayilwela lo mhlaba siluze abantwana nami firstborn yami ngayiluza ngo93 same month and same year uChrisani comrade azabulawa. So umntana nami namanje ngisamluzile. La kukhulumani kunabantu abaningi ababaqhwalile samba nabo. Siloko ipresident iyazi kahle yafika eGadebe section. Yafika yayovula amatshe laphana. Ifika laphana. uRamaphosa ke lo wafika naye lapho walanyula abumama khona ngasema hostel bathi bambulala bathi indaba yethu abayithathi seriously for 21 years manje sihamba la kulokhulumani lo and then ke ipresident ilokuthi yasibalekela thina indaba yethu abayithathi nathi ngabayithathi indaba yethu yonke lento lekufanele ukuthi nathi masiyikhuluma sesibuya nakulo nase
public protector
eVets University abu Jeff Radebe besinabo laphana eVets University nabantu beTRC abantu beTRC lo mama lo waphuma laphana yena wathi yena bavala ngama 30,000 banika abantu upresident Mbeki uyayazi lo ndaba naye uBishop Tutu. And then azange sayithatha serious indaba yethu.
Yeah, this is about, because one of the recommendations, and we don't talk about this, of the TRC was that there should be compensation. Yeah. And in Thokoza, so many people lost their lives. I mentioned the sexual violence and all of that. And you've just been saying, that the gentleman has just been saying that they've been knocking at the doors of government and nobody is listening. But the suffering began way back and it's still continuing. That's what you're saying.
And already, just before we go, and reparations is not only the government paying, but reparations is also, if you had worked for a company, the company should also pay reparations, even for those people who've died already, for their families, scholarship, and even make you part of the BEE, not to make the political tycoons BEE partners.
They don't want to.
So I think part of the problem for me in kind of the current, our political context, is that today it's almost enough because a politician says that something was a mistake, we treat it as a mistake, right? And so the point I'm trying to make is that we have this kind of obsession that we have, I think, with politics of parliament, which we saw and we are seeing are taking us nowhere very fast. Is that, Floyd, let me finish, you spoke.
Let's go with you.
let's continue.
Okay, give me a chance.
Is that political parties today, we are all too happy, it almost seems, to be okay with not developing the kind of activism that is needed to drive real social political change. We are seeing black women organizing in communities. We are seeing, laborers in rural communities organizing themselves. We know that, we have Africanists who are leading land occupations across this country. There's a kind of activism that is needed to drive actual change. But it's not in the interest of political parties, right? Because it's not in the interest of power, right? So ours is to say that when Floyd said, for example, that the solution is land, my question would then be, what are you doing to organize black people to start fighting for land outside of marching to banks and all those things, right? And so when we're speaking, if we are truly, these are the kinds of stories that we should be engaging if we are serious about any meaningful change, right? It's not enough that we get to a show and then we're saying that we mustn't use this just for political speak. African people have been organizing themselves. African people I'm not even asking for a consistent politics all the time, more than I'm asking for an honest kind of politics. And we need to understand that some of these issues genuine issues that African people have are being used for political agendas. Even the current narrative around state capture, we know that it's suiting people are taking it up because it suits a very clear interest, and part of it with the EFF is this almost obsession with Jacob Zuma, right? Which, as if we do,
let him finish, and then let her finish.
And so my point here, Reddy, is that one way that moving forward looks like, if we are serious, is that we need to be as interested in politics of the ballot box as we are in organizing communities around the issues that they really face, with the capacity that we have in whatever structures that we are working with.
All right. Thank you, Ziggy. Okay, hold on. No, wait, Floyd. I'm going to come to you. You made a specific reference to the EFF and land. Yeah, so we'll give him a chance to respond, but there are people who've been raising their hands there since we started the show. Please go ahead. You've got the mic.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, what I want to...
Put the mic on your mouth,
sure.
sir.
What I want to bring across is the fact that even in our arguments and our engagements, I think we're lacking also a sense of definition, right? To say, we're trying to say what is state capture, 1, 2, and 3, but first of all, what is a state, according to us, and what we understand as a state? Because what I would say, and I'm going to get to my question very quickly, is that, look, man, the state in South Africa, as we conceive of it, was made up by people who based it on their own foundational and elemental beliefs, without the agency and the influence of black people. And so it is not a surprise today that that same state is able to be captured, because it is their rules that are in place that are going to allow them to get away with these things. Mani is saying, arrest them. He knows that the way in which the state and the judiciary, it involves the judiciary, legislature, the way in which it is structured is in such a way that they are going to be able to run away with whatever crimes that they do against us as citizens. And so I would like us to really reimagine and reconceptualize a state that does not come from a Western, a European kind of setup. And that's why that lady there, you sit on something to do with Oppenheimer, has the guts to say that she believes in the rule of law. What law? Because that is the law that you came with to our country. That is the law that protects your people. That is why Oppenheimer and his descendants can walk freely even after the crimes that they've made against us. That is the kind of rule of law that you believe in. Unfortunately, that law is not made for us. Does not even cater for us. And so what I would like us to do first is to define what we mean by state. Are black people even part of the state? When we try to think about, how different people like Max Weber, Karl Marx talk about the state. Because some of the issues that are being raised here, are issues that are not even about the Guptas anymore, right? I think we've passed the point of the Guptas. But what the EFF has been able to do is that they've used the Guptas as a sort of red herring, or I don't know, like a signal to say there is a problem generally in terms of how power and monopoly of resources is relates to people in South Africa.
Can you give the microphone to... Let's give her a chance, please. Everyone listen. Yeah.
Good evening. I am Zanele Luana. I am from Black First, Land First. We cannot have the conversation around state capture in a country of black people where black people continue to be landless, continue to be poor, and continue to be marginalized. What we need to have and what we need to talk about here is how united we need to be as black people in this country to fight white settlers who have monopolized all sectors of economies, to make sure that we continue to fight Comrade Zuma, we continue to fight the Guptas, while the Oppenheimer family, while the Rupert family continues to hold the wealth of the country, while black people remain poor and landless in this country. But I think it's also important for us to be tolerant for dissenting views, because the dominant narrative, even in this debate today, is pro-white monopoly capital, is against the government, is protecting the interest of the likes of Johann Rupert and the Oppenheimer, who control public views of the ordinary people in this country. Allow dissenting views, allow black people to stand up proudly to say that this is our country, and only us, black people, can unite to take our country from white people, the representatives of Oppenheimers, who can tell us to move on.
Themba, I want to... Hold on, can you get it? Themba, hold on. Hold on. I want you to respond to that. We're coming there. Hold on, Gayton. Themba, I want you to respond to that, particularly because there seems to be a debate between the crimes of today, what do we elevate? In other words, you can't go into the crimes that are being committed today until you account for the crimes of the past. Are we going to be stuck there? How do we move forward?
Well, the nation has to move forward. I think the biggest challenge we face, all of us, black, white, young, old, is to make sure that we take the resources that are available in this country and turn them around for the benefit of ordinary
Can we still
people.
go after the resources that were stolen in the past in order to...
My view is that, let's decide first what we want to do. Take the resources of the country, use them for the benefit of people. Secondly, begin to address the issue of people, especially the ruling classes, right? Black and white, who are actually taking advantage of the situation today for their own benefit to the exclusion of the majority of people. So we got to make sure that we have a functioning, strong state. That means we have a properly functioning parliament, we have a judiciary, we have a strong media, we have independent institutions like a public protector, so that if something, or especially the prosecution agencies, if somebody breaks a law, steals money, whether it's from a company or from a health department, we must prosecute them. Whether somebody stole money 30, 40 years ago, as indicated in let's deal with them now. But you can't deal with them unless you have institutions like the judges and the prosecution authorities that can do the work.
Does
At
the
the
fact
moment,
that we
nobody can
didn't
do the work.
prosecute, and it is the post-democratic state, that is a fact. There was a recommendation that TRC, I keep saying it. Does the fact that, as you document even in your book, that culprits, people who looted, who got rich on the back of apartheid and exploitation of black labor, the fact that the democratic state chose not to go after them, is that coming back to bite? Should we have, and is there still room?
I think really the problem in most countries that have gone through a phase of democratization is precisely this. We grapple with how do you deal with elites who've made vast amount of money off oppression. And in Zimbabwe today, they are going to grapple with the same thing. Robert Mugabe is no longer, but the system will remain. The real question we need to be asking ourselves from our neighboring brothers and sisters are you going to be able to hold to account those very wealthy people who've stripped the assets from the diamond mines, who've moved the cash offshore, who've worked with their partners in China and South Africa and around the globe to make them rich? And we haven't done that. We haven't done that successfully in South Africa. I'd also argue really one of the reasons for that is that we've glorified the very wealthy. And I think the question that I want to ask provocatively, to Mr. Manyi, to Gayton, to Mr. Montana, to business people around us, and I name you because you sit here as business people and former head of a public institution. How much will be enough? Do we want to emulate the Oppenheimers and the others who want to shore up as much cash as possible? In a country where we have such extreme poverty, this is not acceptable.
Because it looks like we're saying the Oppenheimers did it, so don't focus on who's doing it now.
Absolutely. We don't want millionaires in our country.
We don't want what?
We don't want millionaires. We want people to share in this country's wealth. We glorify people that are very wealthy. And frankly, Gayton, I think you wish to be that one day. I wish you want to be a multimillionaire.
No. We've got to give Gayton...
You wrote one of the most brilliant books to have ever been written in this country.
Wait, hold on, Gayton, you've got to have a mic. Where's the yellow microphone? Okay, okay, sorry, William, we're going to use it just quickly.
All right. I think first, I want to make 3 quick points. I want to congratulate you. You have written one of the most brilliant, honest books that has ever come out in this country. And I want to say to you, big ups, and we have learned a lot from you. Thank you. Secondly, I got 3 quick points. I want to stop this thing when you are speaking as black people. You make an example with RDP houses. None of these people want to forever stay in RDP houses. So when you talk about money, oh, so many RDP houses. Like we should be happy when our people are going to get RDP houses. But the third point, and the more honest point here, we must be honest. We must be very honest in this country. And we can't blame the EFF. You can't blame any other political party. We should blame the African National Congress. The African National, already what is happening here is heartbreaking. I'll tell you what's happening. I call it the con of CODESA. And I'm not selling anything here, but on the 15th of December, I'm bringing out my book called The Con of CODESA. Because what happened? They lie. There's people, the Constitution was written in the house of Oppenheimer. That's Constitution. I just want to bring something. Structurally, in this country, it is impossible for black people to become billionaires unless they are in cahoots with the previous billionaires. Yeah. Can I just, my last sentence?
The Constitution was written by the Constitutional Assembly, the people we elected, really.
No.
I think we must talk the facts.
No.
I'm not saying that the very wealthy, that the Oppenheimers and the others didn't have interest. But we had Gayton, we had a Constitutional Assembly, we elected.
Give me a chance.
Let him finish.
You have put what you think a man like me, I can put something on paper without sex. Are you aware? Let me ask you something. Are you aware that 26% of the people that was involved in the negotiation for us who are party spies in the ANC?
We'll name them. I don't know.
We will name them.
Okay. Zuma was spy number 1.
No.
I named it.
No. No.
Yes.
Can I just finish off? I want to give my last sentence. Just finish off. Yes. So what I want to say, we should be honest. White people, particularly rich white people, has outmaneuvered us at CODESA. The killers of Biko, the killers of Ashley Krill, they are still walking here like they've not killed nobody important.
Whose fault is that?
It is our fault.
Whose fault is it? Why didn't you
that's why I started by saying it's our government's fault. I said even it is not the fault of EFF or anybody. So what I'm trying to say to everybody here, let me just finish my point, Mom. What I'm trying to say is we must acknowledge we have failed the people. I want that one, you must be very clear. Those people must be in jail. Saudi Arabia has showed us. Russia has showed us. Oppenheimer, Rupert, Ramaphosa, they must be arrested tomorrow.
We'll come to you after him. He raised his hand first. I'll come to you next. He had his first. I'll come to you. And we'll give you a chance as well.
All of us are getting very hot under the collar.
I did promise you after Zukiswa spoke, I know. So everybody is angry and wants to speak at once, and we've got time constraint. I'm going to ask us to just be a little understanding and mature about that. And there's this gentleman as well.
The point is this: civil society okay, guys, give him a chance. Have decided on the 30th of November to go and picket at the National Prosecuting Authority, because that is where the current problem lies. That people doesn't want to prosecute the looters, the thieves, that is even sitting in this room. But they talk eloquently about doesn't that and that. And that's the reason why I think, shut up. The point is basically this.
Okay, wait.
The point is basically this. We must prosecute these people. All of them. It doesn't matter what party they belong to.
Okay, we've had speakers from the panel and the invited guests. Let's go to a community member and then I'll come to you. Hold on, guys, okay.
Let's give the community leader.
All right, we've got to listen to each other. We've got to listen to each other.
All right, colleagues,
Okay?
let's give.
We listened to
someone
you.
who came
Let's
very
listen.
far.
We've got.
Let's have a
Yeah, I know. Hold on, Floyd. Kuluma nabantu bakho ke. Okay, let's listen to Mama, guys. I'm asking you this from the bottom
let's
of my
have
heart. Can we
respect,
listen
please.
to Mama at the corner? I'm coming to you next. Okay. We did listen to you when you raised your point so eloquently. Let's listen, right?
English language, because
Khuluma,
I
ma.
become tapped when all these things are saying, you know. I've been listening to latter speakers here. When you blame EFF are the kids that started when they see the father who cannot take them to the right path. You know, when you are a father, leading the kids, your own children, to the darkness or to the deepest, musima, omkholo, okenya bana ba hamona. But how modimo aba feel a light of taking them out and tell the truth of what the father inside the house is doing. I don't see any reason everybody must say, hey, EFF. EFF has helped the country to tell the country the truth.
Oh, you know what? Fetsa mama, se re tlo tswalela ne?
Yeah. Ke a kopa gore setšhaba sa Modimo se se tletseng mo. Open your eyes and ears and listen and see where we are going. Yeah, EFF will to the Guptas, I'm going to talk about it. Ntate Zuma, I'm going to talk about you. You have taken South Africa in the drain. Yes. And the Guptas, these are tax money, Aruna. But it's Mama Keishin and Barakisa, they don't pay tax anyway. So the businessmen who are with the Guptas.
Dennis, okay, Mama, Ruhutwi, Arasana na, Arasana na, 2 hours. Everybody feels they didn't have time. Floyd, stop. We have to listen. Just keep talking. We'll amplify your volume. They'll hear you at home. Guys,
basically,
listen, guys, listen.
The people of South Africa, you have the power. Why aren't you using it? You have the power. The communities have the power. You do. If black people in this country decided that they are not going to buy a particular thing, this economy will suffer. If you decided that this is what we want in the banks and do it that way, you have the muscle. Unfortunately, we underestimate our power. We do. So if we really organize in the communities and take issues, not all of them at the same time. Take one thing at a time and stick to that. You will change the circumstances. The things that you don't want can go away, but you have to be organized and choose your battles wisely. And to Floyd, when it's government, I include you too. When you are when you are sitting as one of the 400 in Parliament, you are a legislator. And yeah, but you are.
And you want to have a
You are a legislator.
Okay, we have given you a chance,
legislator.
We have given you a chance. And do you want to speak quickly? I'm going to come to you, and you must respond to what Zugisa said. Carry on, just carry on. You can be heard on the control panel. Just carry on speaking.
I want to build on the previous speaker and the notion of accountability.
Let's listen, guys.
South Africa today.
Disagree. Can we listen?
South Africa today is a democracy, which means people can organize, people can speak out, people can talk about the issues that are most important for them, and most important, they can go and vote differently. So if people are not accountable to you and are doing terrible things, you should hold them to account. Don't re-elect the rascals again. So for most South Africans, the fact that we don't have growth and we have increasing unemployment is their foremost issue. We also have terrible schools for the vast majority of people. And unless we start to say, how are we going to deal with these issues, we're not going to get the 50% of the population who are in poverty out of poverty. And that's some of the most important issues on the table. So we can shout slogans, we can shout at each other, but the fact is that unless we start to think seriously about how we fix this country's economy so that more and more people can get a job and skills,
and does that include
you're not going to get anywhere.
Hold on. No. Every single one of you, every single one of you finished your point when you were making it. Every single person finished. It's fine, you can disagree with her, but have you finished what you wanted to say?
No, let me
Let
say...
her finish. Just finish. I'm coming to Mzwanele. Let's give her a chance. We invited her here precisely because she holds the views that she holds. We'll debate them, but let's let her finish. And finish.
So I work for a non-profit organization. I have I am interested in how we get more and more people to have all the advantages and access to ownership, to starting businesses, to dealing with the issues that we need. That's what you need. So you can shout and scream as much as you want, but the rule of law protects all of us.
The rule of law protects you also, and it gives you a right to speak. It gives everyone a right to speak. Mzwanele, there's your right. I'm giving it to you.
Okay, no, I mean, all I want to do now with this 1 minute I have is to invite young people that look for internships. We'll employ them at ANN7 for internships.
Guys, are you going to apply?
We already.
God, you spoken. Skodati, are you going to apply because they said you are not a real journalist?
We've already saved 500 jobs.
Yeah.
We want to do more.
No, are you going to apply, but you are not a real journalist?
Must I send my CV to the Saxonwood Tribune or to Mzwanele Manyi?
Floyd, Zukiswa asked you something, but closing as well.
I thought that after Mama spoke, they were going to say the debate is finished because she summarized it very well. But let us deal with some few issues. Is that
not a few, just quick.
The EFF is the second biggest land redistributor in South Africa outside of government. And we're the biggest land redistributor without compensation in South Africa. I challenge all researchers. And everyone, journalists, to go and audit how much land we have given to the people. We have led a lot of land struggles that have been successful, where people are residing now comfortably because of our interventions. That is a fact. Now, I'm worried about my sister here because she tends to criticize the EFF with little facts. Like she relies on sound bites to respond to the EFF. The policies of the EFF are there. You can easily access them. I'll even give you a book to read about that so that you know how to deal with it properly. Lastly, is that this debate is okay. Whatever you think, that's why you can even allow a Gupta militia that uses blackness to defend corruption to speak here, called BLFL, whatever, carry first, land first.
What did you say?
That is why you can allow those people. That is a fact. So it's a balanced debate. We have engaged on issues. We know what has to happen and what must happen moving forward.
Thanks for watching the second hour of the big debate. One of our biggest questions is how to deal with the crimes of the past and not lose sight of the looting that's going on. Next week's big debate. Bye-bye.
Out of order now.